Hello, and welcome to the first lecture in the Training and Development course. The first thing to talk about in developing training is what constitutes appropriate content or fodder for training. There are three broad areas that training is most impactful for, and we sometimes abbreviate it by referring to them as the KSAs. K stands for knowledge. If there is something where an employee is not aware of how to do something or doesn't have the right background or cognitive fodder with which to do the job, that is appropriate for training. We can improve someone's knowledge through training. The S in KSA refers to the skill. Someone may know how to do the job, but they've never done it, and we afford them the chance to practice the skill, practice the behavior. So the K is knowledge, the S is skill. The A refers to ability. Do they have the wherewithal to actually accomplish the task, to complete the behavior? Those are the KSAs. Now, sometimes people will refer to the A as attitude. And there is debate. This is in conflict. Training primarily is focused on output or behavior and doesn't really address how someone feels about the experience. It does not delve into the emotion. So while you may hear people talk about attitude as being appropriate for training, I would have to say I don't agree with that. You can do certain things within training that can improve people's attitudes, but that's a byproduct and not the target of the training. By virtue of giving people exposure to new skills, by providing them with new knowledge, it can improve their attitude about the workplace. But to provide training where the goal is to change people's attitudes, that is not something that commonly is accepted by most practitioners and theorists in the training profession. The next thing to talk about is who has accountability or responsibility for training. In some businesses, there are specific departments or functions that are referred to as the training department, or it may be part of the human resources or personnel function. And clearly, those departments, by virtue of their mission, are critical to the training effort, but they are not solely responsible for the output of training. The other two parties are obviously the individual to be trained. You as an individual have to have accountability for your own development, your own career progression, your own skill development. And the manager also has the responsibility. It has been my experience that certain managers will very often pass an employee on to the training department and expect the training department to take a flawed individual and return them fully trained. That is not candidly how it really happens, though. The manager has to have responsibility for identifying needs, for mentoring, directing, guiding, demonstrating, and then also providing reinforcement and evaluation based on the trained skill. So the manager has an equal share in this along with the individual and whatever functional department is tasked with creating training. The next thing to be focused on is that when we look at training initiatives or training projects, it's important that we differentiate between, is something really a skill issue where they don't know how to do the job, the KSAs I referred to earlier, or is it a will issue? They know how to do it, they're choosing not to do it. Not because they're bad employees, not because they're mischief makers, but perhaps because the organization doesn't reward that behavior. They're not provided incentives to do that behavior. When the incentives are in conflict with the training, obviously people will more commonly do what will provide them with compensation, incentive, higher evaluation scores, etc., and not necessarily what they were trained to do. The last thing to look at is, when is training not going to be as effective? We talked about the KSA areas when training does work. When would training not be effective? One of the times is if there is the incentive I referred to earlier. If incentives are not aligned with the expectations, people will very often follow the incentive path. Another time is if there is an organizational dynamic issue, whether it's the structure or the way the organization is developed, so that people perhaps don't have opportunity to do that trained task, or it's not their responsibility. You can train somebody to do something, but if they are not able to access that skill because it's not part of their job, then the training won't be effective for that person. Or if you hold someone accountable for something, but they don't know when do I do it, what are the triggers to performance, it can hamper the success of the training. The last thing to look at is the resources or tools available. If you hold someone accountable for learning PowerPoint or Microsoft Word applications, but they don't have computers on their desk or they don't have computers in a common area, the training won't be effective. So there are a lot of reasons why training would be an appropriate response. Those are the KSAs, but there are also times when other interventions might be more appropriate.